I know there's bigger issues going on in this country right now, but for the sake of normalcy, please allow me to provide you with a little distraction by complaining about Star Trek a little bit, while also reminding you that this franchise, like so many others, and Hollywood have played into the divisiveness that is going on in this country. I hope you and your family are safe. I hope saner minds will prevail. Please like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy the video.
Finally, I think Star Trek was a statement of affection and optimism about living things in general, and I think this again reflects credit on the audience.
We yearn for sage adults. We yearn for people who learned from their experience and
who acknowledge their mistakes.
Nerdrotic.com.
The worst damage anyone can do to the franchise of Star Trek is to have Alex Kurtzman make more of it. And that's what we're going to get with Strange New Worlds, starring Anson Mount as fan favorite Captain Pike, Rebecca Romijn, and God, I wish it was Rebecca Romijn Stamos, I'm still rooting for you guys, as number 1, and Ethan Pecker as Spock. And the showrunner will be Akiva Goldsman. That's right, the man complicit with nipples on the batsuit, the man who wrote the episode with Sonar in Space, the man who wrote Batman and Robin, the man who gave us the famous "Fuck Batman" from Teen Titans, that Akiva Goldsman, and oh, that is just scratching the surface of his cringe. Now, I want everyone to abandon the false hope we all had, myself included, with Sherry Redstone, thinking she's going to come in on her white horse and save this franchise. Now, we need to state the obvious at this point. Star Trek is dead. Stick a fork in it. It's done. Once we get what we're going to get from CBS All Access or whatever the hell it's going to be called in the next couple of months is what we're going to get. And after that, it will wallow in obscurity. Not unlike Zorro, Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers. Remember Wilma Deering? I remember Wilma Deering. It's going to be looked back on as some old-timey franchise that we used to like, but it will never be relevant again. Now, if you ask CBS and take what they say at face value or what their subsidiaries say in the Access Media at face value, it's a complete success, although they have never provided any real data. Any measurable metric that we can see shows that the fans are not happy with what Alex Kurtzman is cooking. Yet we get another announcement. And with this announcement of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, we get confirmation of something beyond the shadow of a doubt. CBS Star Trek has admitted failure. How could I say something like this? Well, because it's obvious. Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery are very similar in aesthetic and tone. So if you're going the right direction, why would you change course? And that's what this is, a course correction. Before we get to Strange New Worlds, a quick reminder where we were tonally with CBS Star Trek just a couple of short months ago. Star Trek Picard is divisive, and showrunner Michael Chabon doesn't mind at all. Of course he doesn't mind, because he's not there anymore. So were there things about Picard that you knew you wanted to do that you could sense would test some boundaries for fans? And I'm going to replace the word fans with paying customers.
It's me, your old friend, Michael Chabon, and it's story time.
Sure. To that extent, I was aware of a kind of toxic customer. The anti-SJW, you know, sad little corner of customers. You just disregard that. Sometimes you're motivated to have things simply because it's possibly going to piss off or provoke people, paying customers, who seem to have missed the memo about just what exactly Star Trek is and always has been about.
Michael Chabon.
While I admire Berkeley's own Birkenstock-wearing Michael Chabon's candor, it can't be undersold that a professional showrunner at a billion-dollar corporation working on the biggest show for their fledgling streaming service that requires rebranding because Star Trek was such a success decided to bake into the script trolling fans. Yet that is the state of current year Hollywood. That is the state of the comic book industry. That is the eternal state of the BBC, turning one of the most uniting franchises to ever exist into one of the most divisive and being proud of it. Maybe that's why you're not there anymore, because apparently the fans didn't like it very much, and apparently Amazon didn't like it very much. Hence, we get the course correction that probably gave you whiplash from what we got with Star Trek Picard. And as far as memos go, I don't think Gene Roddenberry ever intended to see one of his characters deconstructed by talentless hacks.
a copy of a master's thesis in mass psychology, which suggested still another reason for the show's popularity. And it points out that while most television lead characters were anti-heroes, Star Trek had true hero figures. In fact, heroes are almost old-fashioned in their insistence on personal integrity, that their word and their oath was their bond.
This show represents a vision that Gene has, not only of the 24th or 23rd century, but a vision of life and of how people deal with the human condition.
This brings us to Strange New Worlds. New Star Trek series featuring Spock and Pike will be optimistic and more episodic, creators say. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Star Trek is boldly going back to its roots. CBS revealed Friday that it has given a series order to Star Trek Strange New Worlds, a new show that will take place on the Starship Enterprise in the years prior to James T. Kirk coming aboard as captain. The new show is set in, like other recent Star Trek spin-offs, to stream on CBS All Access, or whatever they're going to be calling it in the next couple of months, because they are rebranding, like I said before, but it will, according to co-creator and executive producer Akiva Goldsman, Hugh, R.I.P. Hugh, more closely in tone to the original Kirk-era Star Trek in structure and tone than those other recent additions to the franchise have. Well, that sounds familiar. I can't quite recall where I've heard that before. Oh, I remember, from CBS-owned comicbook.com. Star Trek Discovery cast promises return to familiar Trek tone ideals in Season 2. It was building up out of the darkness to get towards where we are in much more familiar territory. So, Season 2 absolutely follows in those footsteps, building up the Starfleet that we are more familiar with. Oh, you mean the Starfleet that was a mirror to our modern dystopia? That was from CBS-owned CNET.com, which also gave Star Trek Picard this very impartial and I'm sure not pre-written review. It's a fascinating expansion on one of the themes glimpsed in previous shows, the idea that Starfleet has it pretty good in its gleaming starships, but the rest of the galaxy still struggles with the same problems as we do today. I do not doubt for one moment that Akiva Goldsman and Alex Kurtzman have rationalized it in their heads that this is an olive branch extended to the fandom. Unfortunately, neither of these two gentlemen are capable of making inspirational, positive, episodic television, much less Star Trek.
I think everyone's very in sync about staying consistent with Roddenberry's vision. And I think everyone also recognizes that in order to make this show relevant.
There's that word relevant again, which means something entirely different than it did even 15 years ago. Relevance, when it comes to Star Trek, used to be how it relates to the audience. Relevance today is how it relates to Alex Kurtzman.
It has to exist in a world
Are they about to make out?
in which television and film is, the line between the two has become very blurred. So from a production point of view, the demands of the network have been, let's make it worth the money.
These are the two gentlemen complicit with Michael Chabon for killing Admiral Picard and replacing him with a robot copy of himself so he can experience the life of a marginalized robot.
And no one has ever questioned the core of what Trek needs to be. So it's not like we got some notes that the studio is asking us to do that are fundamentally changing the nature of what Star Trek is.
And at long last, shut the fuck up.
We knew from very early on the idea was to kill Picard and then revive him.
And we wanted to, again, exploit this idea of character evolution in story. We wanted to put our money where our mouth was. So we were saying, hey, marginalized synths are people too. What better way to make that statement than to take the character who is most human and
kill Picard.
Put him with all his humanity into a synthetic form.
It's the same person, it's the same consciousness, it's the same body in many ways, just rebuilt. So if there is no difference, and if we're saying they're equal, then he has to walk the walk.
Here is some brown sticky shit.
Oh, and if you need another example, from StarTrek.com. The humbling of Admiral Picard. On Star Trek Picard, our beloved Admiral is forced to die and be replaced with a robot. No, sorry, didn't say that. To reckon with his privilege as a Starfleet officer from a planetary superpower. Star Trek has always dealt in stories about species and cross-cultural interactions, and the way each franchise tells these stories is a commentary on the era that produced them. Star Trek Picard is no exception. I do not doubt for a moment that Star Trek Picard is that story told from the perspective of a very old, privileged, rich, adult pretender. I'm not going over this entire article. Let's just hit some of the highlights from this masterpiece. In 2020, representation and inclusion have just as much, if not more, importance than diversity. I will say that again. In 2020, representation and inclusion have just as much, if not more, importance than diversity. Huh? Claiming to be an ally to a marginalized person without acknowledging your personal privilege feels hollow. Picard's ensemble of writers and actors lean into all of this. I mean, look at this writer's room. I am blinded by all that diversity. Even number 1, the dog represents a marginalized community. The dog represents a marginalized community. And this is, again, from StarTrek.com. And I know I don't need to ask any of you to think about that just for a moment and think about what that actually means. And these are the people in charge of Star Trek, but it doesn't end there. Serving up multi-layered narrative that explores how power and privilege play out in relationships with people who are different. Don't you just love it when the most privileged in Hollywood do a character study on privilege and fail at it? But the one that's on the nose is Picard is no longer relevant. Not being relevant is the ultimate slap in the face for high-profile people used to calling the shots. The key to being relevant is having as many fans or customers as you possibly can, so it makes one wonder why you would want to be divisive and be proud of it. So you'll have to forgive me for being skeptical about Strange New Worlds. We have seen Luke Skywalker deconstructed, and that was rejected by the fan base. We have seen Doctor Who deconstructed, and that was soundly rejected by the fan base. How is it any different for Star Trek? Well, spoilers, it isn't. Alex Kurtzman is practically the same person as Kathleen Kennedy for CBS All Access. They are stuck with him. Star Trek has been stuck on the launching pad, constantly changing directions, constantly firing showrunners, constantly firing writers. So much for diversity, and we get the same result. A divisive show with an aging and shrinking audience. And if that isn't the case, then show us the numbers, CBS. You want some more evidence how vulnerable Star Trek is right now? It was completely brought down by a YouTuber. Any positive momentum Strange New Worlds had with its announcement was destroyed by Red Letter Media. There's a lot of different directions I could have taken with this video, like run with some rumors. For example, Sir Patrick Stewart can't be insured for Star Trek Picard Season 2, putting that in jeopardy. Star Trek Discovery Season 3 might be its last. Or there is no financing for Strange New Worlds or international distribution. Or Amazon was really pissed about Star Trek Picard. That's why we got the change in tone with Strange New Worlds with optimistic and episodic. But I didn't run with any of those. You want to know why? Because I just want good Star Trek. And what happens, happens. We are clearly going to get some more Kurtzman Trek. For how long? That remains to be seen. This fact remains the same. The show that used to unite people, that used to be for everyone, just like Doctor Who, is now proudly one of the most divisive out there. And that's a damn shame. Everyone have a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.